Hey, welcome back to A Conversation With. My name is Philip DeFranco, and today we're having a conversation with Hank Green. Before we jump into this thinly veiled pseudo-therapy session between two grown men who haven't talked to one another in a while with a monetary incentive, I want to thank one of these sponsors of this podcast, nordvpn.com/Phil. Be sure to secure your devices, access to the internet, and shield your browsing data through encrypted tunnels at nordvpn.com/Phil. And on top of that security and privacy for all your devices, it can also help you be entertained, thanks to it unblocking content on multiple platforms that are region blocked. But with that said, let's jump into it.
Hank, when was the last time we had like a real conversation that wasn't like Twitter or God?
I like probably over a year ago, honestly. Yeah. It's a shame.
And I feel like it's always a little hard to describe you. You're a longtime YouTuber, creator in the space. You created and sold VidCon. Your brother was a well-known author, so you were like, that sounds fun. You headed up a really big merchandise company. You decided, hey, we're gonna educate the youth with science and history and go educational. But the thing that I was driving into the studio this morning, the thing that will always forever stay in my mind is you are the inventor of the 2D glasses.
Good. I'm so glad that can it be, please be my legacy.
Yes, that is in my head. That defines you because you saw this thing that was new and everyone is enjoying, and you were like, what about the people that think this new thing sucks or can't enjoy it because, you know, their eyes? And I don't know, that for some reason I feel like that speaks to you as a person in a certain way.
That I created the ultimate fad product for the ultimate fad product. I was like, this thing isn't going to last, but let me create something that's going to last even less long. And hey, honestly, it worked. And they invited me on Shark Tank to talk about 2D glasses. I've never talked about this. I got an email from the Shark Tank people, and they were like, we saw your 2D glasses. We want you to come on the show. And I was like, I've seen your show. I know which one I'll be. I won't be the one where they're all like clamming over themselves. They'll be like, what are you thinking, you dumb product creator? But look, I made like 5 figures off 2D glasses. It's a win. Bet.
Yeah, no, it's probably a good thing you didn't go on, because they were probably like, okay, so this is going to be a layup for a Cuban to just make some dude cry.
Well, my God. For a moment, I thought that maybe I was going to make real money off 2D glasses, and they'd I'd sell them to the movie theaters, but this was always folly. But it was a very fun thing. It was the first time I ever got a product manufactured overseas.
Okay. But I think it's also something that made sense, because when 3D started going mainstream outside of Avatar, it was all garbage. It was like Piranha 3D. And because a lot of the 3D back then was like, okay, it was still like that cheesy stuff where it's like lunging at the screen, lunging at your face rather than being a depth that you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was satisfying a need, which is like, if you want to go to see the movies, but you hate 3D movies, but your friends want to all go see the movies, you're going to pay extra twice. You're going to pay extra for the movie, and you're going to pay extra for these dang glasses that Hank Green made you buy.
What's your favorite thing that you've created? If you had out of all your babies.
Well, I mean, like, my first thought was the 45-pound ball of human flesh that is in my house right now. I don't know that I created him. My physical contribution was small, but yeah, I mean, he's really great, and I do kind of feel like now that he's getting a little older, like I do kind of feel like I kind of help create him by teaching him how to deal with the world and interact with stuff. But as far as the actual question that you're asking, I think probably CrashCourse. Just because like it helps, it really does help a lot of teachers and students. And like, I get stopped about that more than anything. And it's like, when people stop me to say that they like CrashCourse, they're not like, I'm such a big fan. They're like, thank you for helping me become a nurse. Thank you for helping me like in my life, in my job, and like in my contribution to society, which is way better than like, this sort of like anything. It's so wonderful. But the other thing is like, really like the thing that I like the most of all the things I've created is really just like the dumb 15 years of videos back and forth with my brother, and like, we're still doing it. And like that, like all the people who are still doing it from you and I's era is such a thing. Like it's amazing. Like nobody has 15-year-old TV shows. That never happens. But we're still doing it. We're still still got our communities, and like, of course, people come in and out, and a lot of the people who are watching now haven't been, very few people have been watching the whole time, but that community is like, that's the thing that I sort of think about the most when I'm thinking about my body of work.
Yeah, well, because you do have a lot of those staples. I wonder how many people, when you say like not many have stayed with you, I wonder how many people have, because I feel like at least a third of my audience is over a decade.
I don't know. It might not be. Well, here's the weird thing. You never really know, because like any given time you ask, you're asking the people who are watching that episode. And like, nobody watches every episode of anything anymore, unless your show comes out like 10 times a year, maybe. So yeah, that it's very hard to tell. And like, if you ask, like, the people who respond are going to be the most diehard people. Like, we do a survey every year to see sort of like the state of our community, but we are very well aware that the people who answer that survey are going to be the ones who are most engaged, who tend to watch the most stuff, etc.
How I know you mentioned your son. How old is your son?
He is 3.5.
Okay, 3.5. Yeah.
If you ask him, he will say, "I turned 4 at the end of October," and I'm just like, I love that so much. You sound like that's just so pretentious.
Yeah, that's so great. Wait, so do you just have the one?
Yeah.
Okay, for some reason I thought you had an older son. I don't know. It's I will say that's like the most interesting, well, the most uncomfortable, which is actually, I use that in a good way, because I feel like I'm very comfortable going into most anything these days. Right before I hopped over to the studio to film this, I had my first Zoom call for my son's new kindergarten, and it's just like looking at all the people that I'm like, are we going to be friends? Our kids are going to be around each other for the next 4 years minimum. Also, it's such a weird time for us to go in, because half the kids and us, we're all going to be interacting over Zoom, which this morning was I've stayed away as long as I could. This morning was my first time on it, and I was like, I could see how this would slowly drain my soul over several months of just people like on mute, nodding, trying to show that they're listening. Ugh.
Yeah. And like, it's weird, because in situations like that, I often end up like switching into performance mode. Like, I have, I do live streams, and I like, it's very hard. Like, if there's a camera pointing at me, to be behaving like a normal person and not like trying to like control things and being like, the flow of this meeting isn't going very well. I think I'm going to sort of step in. And it's like, this is not my responsibility. Like, this is not my company. This is not my live stream.
So Hank, before we kind of talk about the two things that I remember you kind of said we need to talk about this Friday, even though it's going to be like a week old by the time it goes out, but I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts. One, when you were making your first book, right, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, did you feel that pressure because your brother is so established in the space?
No.
Really?
I felt pressure, but it wasn't that pressure. So there's a couple of reasons that like John and I's dynamic isn't competitive at all. One of them is that we do very different things. One of them, though, is that I've seen what that kind of success looks like, and it's great, but it's also not great. And so like, there's good things about it, and there's like terrible things about it. So like, having a book like The Fault in Our Stars, which was like a cultural moment, and people of a certain age are likely to have read it, but definitely know what it is, and probably have also seen the movie, and at least are likely to have an opinion about it. And that's just a lot, man. Like, I'd rather not have like 100% of a certain demographic have an opinion about me. And because like, if everybody has an opinion, it's almost required that a bunch of people's opinions are really negative. So there's that piece of it, but there's also the piece where it's like, that never happens. And like, in the publishing industry, everyone knows that never happens. Like like The Fault in Our Stars was one of the top 10 books of the 2000s or the 2010s. I'm not sure, whichever decade that was. I think it was the 2010s. Obviously it was. I don't know what freaking year it is.
It all blends, man. Don't worry. My brain's mush too.
And that level of success, for a creative work, it is just very unusual. So I never expected it. He never expected it, and like, so no. But I do feel a lot of pressure because of my existing audience, and that's very different when you read a book and you don't know anything about the author and you're not thinking about the author, I feel like I have to write a book in a fundamentally different way where I am both like thinking about the characters and the plot and, you know, like whatever, like the tension and the pacing and all that stuff. And then I'm sort of also on this meta level, imagining what people are imagining about me as they read the thing. And like, because there's no way to get away from it. So to some extent I play into it, and like there are pieces of it where, like, obviously I'm writing a book about a person who's getting famous on the internet. Now, of course, it's also a very different circumstance than I was in. And she's getting way more famous than I ever was or want to be. But you know, like I also like know that people are going to be thinking about like my own experiences. And like when April makes a vlog, like it's going to sound a little bit like a Hank Green vlog. And like, I'm not doing, that's not like not on purpose. It's a little bit on purpose to let people like have this sort of meta experience of, which is all content creation now, where we, you know, the creator is such a big part of the content now in a way that didn't used to be the case.
Yeah. Well, actually, so kind of talking about the book specifically, do you, when you're writing from the point of view of a main character that's a woman, do you have to approach it in a different way? Is there a different process than kind of if you would write for another character? Because I'm completely alien to that world. Yeah,
I mean, well, that's like it's to some extent that is true of every character. Like nobody is you in your book, like unless you're writing a memoir, and so there's always a lot of creation and a lot of assumption that goes into character work. And I think that the best writers are able to sort of completely divorce themselves from their characters. That's not me. So there's like basically all of the characters are like versions of me with dials turned up or down, like more ambitious or less ambitious, or more excited or less excited. And like, but like, I don't know how to imagine a person who isn't me really. Like, can any of us? Like, that's sort of how we all imagine. I feel like how many of us or most of us imagine the world is like, we sort of like start with ourselves as the base case. And then like we imagine other people are us with some variations. But as far as like, you know, gender is a huge difference. It's a big difference in terms of like, and it doesn't have to be a big difference in terms of like the person's base attributes. Like, of course, there are tendencies there, but the biggest difference is how society views them, how they're viewed by people outside of themselves. And that's the thing that I needed the most help with, because I can imagine what it is like to be a woman internally even more easily than I can imagine what it's like to be a woman externally. So like how people treat you, how they see you, like all that stuff is, I only see people seeing me. It's very hard for me to like witness how another person is observed, especially throughout their whole lives. So the real trick there is to get lots of people to read it and tell you the things you kind of got wrong. Like the way that a woman feels in the dressing room is different than the way a man feels in the dressing room, because a woman is much more used to being observed in a certain way. And so like to know how women text each other, or to like, I won't know that. And so I need to have people be like, Hank, this did not ring true. And it's not like those people aren't reading it and they're being like, I found a thing that people are going to like criticize you for, or you need to like tone this down, or the woke police are going to come and get you. It's more like, this just doesn't ring true to the experience of me, a person who has more experience of being a woman than you.
So I was like, Hank, when was the last time the woke police went after you? You seem like a pretty.
It happens to everybody. It does not. Yeah, it happens to everybody.
I was like, you seem like. It feels like you walk a certain tightrope pretty well.
Well, yeah.
Most of the time.
I think like it's you know, when you are like either of us, when you're in the public eye and you're making content that's being viewed really broadly, like you have to spend a lot of time imagining how things are going to be received. And
I've only really started doing that in the last 3 years. I feel like my being a dad has made me a more empathetic person, a less inward looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think about it a lot. I think about a lot about how not just how it's like going to be received in terms of like the world is going to like criticize you for it, because there's definitely people out there who are just like looking for a reason to jump. Sure. But also like you don't want to do like if there's ways to achieve the goal while doing less harm, then do that. And that can be, you know, something really simple, like imagining that there are people with disabilities in the world, and like how are they going to perceive this? There are people, there are different perspectives, and so like knowing that going in is it. I think that it does sort of like scale back the speed at which you can create, and it limits the number of things that you can say. Not like the number of things that you can say, but like it makes you more careful, and so the content might not hit as hard or as true or as like exciting for 90% of the people, because you're worried about the 10% of the people that your content might like hurt their feelings or make them feel worse that day or whatever.
Do you think that that's a net good then?
I think it's a net good, but I think there is a point at which it's not, and like that's the thing that every creator is trying to figure out on their own. The ones who are thinking about this anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think that like, of course, I think for me when I'm doing that, I think it's a net good. But like, there's a line at which like you can't make everything for everyone.
Correct.
And
yeah.
so like if you end up in that place where you're trying to, then you just won't make anything for anyone.
Okay, so then to just. Actually, wait, no. To go back to the book. Going back to the book. When I'm fascinated by the process, just because when I was much younger, I would always write, but I was one of those people that after I would write 2 pages, I was like, well, that's enough of that. I
was that way for a long time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you started making your book, did you imagine it as like a multi-part thing? Have you imagined what it is, where it's going to end, and you're filling in the blanks, or as you're writing it, you're kind of you're learning where that story is going?
Yeah, so both. So the book is 2 books, or the story is 2 books. The second one comes out in July.
The second one's the end?
The second one's the end. Yeah. Okay. And so it's done. It's written. Like the audiobook is being recorded right now, and it's done. And so the first book, I had a very good idea of where the beginning was and where the end was, and I had some good ideas for like some scenes in the middle. And sort of like bridging those gaps was a really creative process that often created stuff that was even more interesting than where I thought I was going. Mm-hmm. So some of those internal scenes that I thought were going to be there ended up not being there. But the end is still there. And the end was what happened, the fact that I thought I was writing one book. And then I sort of like got to the end of the first book, and I realized like, well, that was a really good climax, and that was like that it would feel really weird to be like, all right, and now we're gonna keep going. So it was much more that where I like, and then I like sketched out before I decided that was the end of the book. I sketched out what would happen in the second book to make sure that like there was enough stuff there for a second book, which there was, and more. The second book is longer than the first. So yeah, I knew where I was ending, and I feel like for me that's important, because I want to know sort of the overall arc of the story, and like what I'm trying to say, both thematically and also like how I'm going to express that through plot and character and action and stuff.
Well, what would you say with the first book, and maybe a combination of both without giving something away, was the message that you wanted to get across?
Both books together are about power, and they are about the accumulation of attention, and both from the perspective of an individual, like what we do, like we make things that people pay attention to, and we have different strategies for gathering that attention, and then we have different strategies for using that attention to do things in the world, whether that's growing the things more, or whether that's selling things, or creating community, or like, and it's all of these things. Of course, it's not one or the other, or like making the people feel better about themselves, or understanding the world better the way that you do, like all that stuff. So that was like kind of the first book, is like, this is about the reasons why people do that, and also about the dehumanization that comes along with it, where you're trying to sort of strip yourself down to being like a really sort of pure version of what you are, to the point where like we have these celebrity magazines who are like, can you believe that Claire Danes goes shopping? And that's the level of dehumanization that fame kind of asks for. And when we say like, oh, there's all these bad things about fame, it's actually the same thing. People are either having dehumanized love for you, or they're having dehumanized hate for you. And either way, it's completely parasocial. It's completely inaccurate to the actual like lived experience of a person, like not like as me or as you, a person with an audience. And like the internet has done, I think, a better job at like creating nuance around that stuff. And we both have audiences that understand us more deeply. And so when we can make content for our audiences that has this deep like a more deep understanding of who we are, but externally, we still are sort of well known enough that people have really simplistic views of who we are. And that's how fame always used to be. Like the Backstreet Boys were all about like create a very simple image and like just sort of like live inside of that image. Like the Spice Girls are the best example because they literally in their names, they put their single character attribute. And like, this is what I am. Do not think complicatedly about me. So that's sort of the first books about that kind of stuff and like the dehumanization of fame, the gathering of power, how that plays off with like like opponents, victimhood narratives, the way that like if you find somebody who hates you, you can like grow your audience by talking about how much you're being victimized by this person, which is something that certain political leaders have really started to understand really well. And then you've got the second book, which is more about how that power gets consolidated at a large level, in the way that I think social media companies are doing right now. Like you have it's really interesting. I think a lot about this stuff, so I apologize. But content companies are more and more fragmented. Unless they are their own platform. So Netflix is not fragmented. It is controlling it, but it is its own platform. YouTube, in terms of content creation, is extremely fragmented. It's hundreds of thousands of small businesses making content. And BuzzFeed tries to get into it, but then can't. They can't hold on to their personalities because they can just go off and make their Why I Left BuzzFeed video. And like Vice and Vox are doing a better job of that, but like it's really expensive and hard, and we're probably going to see in the next 6 months or so some consolidation in that space or some like big massive layoffs in that space. So it's just hard. Whereas like really like fragmented creators who are able to like do what you and I do, have small businesses with, tens instead of hundreds of employees, or just like one or two people doing it together. Like that stuff can really sort of like figure out how to get along and stay alive. But the platforms are so powerful. Like because there are no big companies making YouTube videos, except for the record labels, we have no leverage over them. Like we cannot do all we can do is yell, but we can't leave because they have all the eyeballs.
So then kind of that brings up an interesting point of, because there are so few and because they're so massive, what do you think about the argument that they're becoming less and less private companies and more of these public utilities? To the point of, it obviously connects to then removing someone's ability to be on that platform. Does that essentially equal like censorship in a really scary way? Because it's like if the big three remove you, you almost don't exist online unless you have some back other thing. So
this is a lot of what the book is about. It's about whether or not we have to sort of like, or at what point do we have to consider a company that provides a social space more than a company and like start to imagine them as a totalitarian government, because like ultimately it's very few people who are making these decisions at the top, or at least defining the policies at the top. And you see these companies starting to like take steps to look a little bit more like governments. Like Facebook just put into place this like, this, I don't know what they're calling it, but it's like a panel of people who are deciding policy, and they're external to Facebook. And it's like almost like they're saying, here's a balance of power to us. Here's this panel of people that you can trust. And they are going to create precedents for how we enforce policy. And I'm like, so you've created a Supreme Court. Like, so you've created another branch of government. And like they know, like they're aware that they are being perceived this way, and the reason they're being perceived this way is because they're kind of acting like governments. My business is not run in Missoula, Montana. My business is run on YouTube, and I pay taxes to YouTube, and like they provide services to me, and like this is it's a wild reality. And when I was a kid, I would read these science fiction books about futures where corporations would be governments, and I'd be like, wow, that's like super dystopian. And I'm like, oh no, here I am. Fuck, I live in that future now. Like, I kind of am a citizen of a corporate entity. So that's a lot of what the second book is about, you know, like, and there's sort of a fictional company that comes in and is able to, in you know, a science fiction-y way, take over and sort of be the, you know, on the path to being the only social media company. And that, you know, this is not like overt at all in the book. Like, it's not like, doesn't sound like it's about this, but it is about this. And so that's the sort of like theme I'm trying to get to, and like how dangerous that is, and how, and that I'm worried that it is inevitable.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, one of the things that, it's been over a year since I last read it, but one of the things that stood out to me was April essentially having to play the game in the first book of being on air as a way to enable, but the allure of that is so easy to consume you that you kind of lose track of what you actually want to do, what you like, the good that you want to do, because by being a part of the problem, you benefit.
Right.
And it's and I really, that really stood out to me when I was reading that. And I will say, I like that in the last 3 years, we finally live in a world where in entertainment, when something goes like quote unquote viral, it's not 40,000 views. That used to always piss me off in like a movie. It'd be like, wow, this video is blowing up. And you see it has like 37,000 views. You're like, what are you talking about? That's not, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I think April at one point in the book has like over 1 billion simultaneous streams. Yeah. So that's really viral.
I was like, hey, I feel like we're 10 years away from someone doing that. I saw this last week when we're recording this, it was the first time a channel got 1 billion views in a week. Granted, it was like one of these kid channels, but I was like, it took me several years to get my first billion.
No, I mean, I brag about getting 1 billion. The fact that my company has 2 billion total views all the time. Like, that's our like line. And this guy's like, I did it in a week.
Yeah.
So
he's like, and I'm going to sell it and it's going to be great. Kind of on the kind of talking about cult of personality. I know one of the things that you said you wanted to talk about was Some Good News. John Krasinski selling that to CBS All Access. And I want to just hear you, because at this point, when people are hearing this, it'll be a week and a half. So maybe Krasinski says something else. Maybe we get more information. But this is initial reaction. What are your thoughts? It seemed like you weren't happy.
So I did reach out to some of my Hollywood friends, and I was like, "What do you think this went for?" So like, as a person who's in this business, what do you? And their takes were all like, people who do deals in Hollywood, they were all like, it wasn't a lot of money, and so if it wasn't a lot of money, I like, in that case, like, I'm not mad at anyone. I'm just shocked at the stupidity of trying to buy something without any of the thing that is valuable about it. It's wild to me that anyone thinks that the words "some good news" are in any way a valuable thing, or the brand that John Krasinski created around this thing is at all valuable without him. And it comes down to the fact that like legacy media is having a really hard time grappling with the fact that you basically can't buy attention anymore. Like, you can't use money to get attention. You have to use good ideas. And like, that's not all true, but it's pretty true. And this feels very reminiscent of like, it's just like, it's sort of hitting home over and over again. When it comes to Quibi as well, where it's just like, well, we'll have Rachel Brosnahan in a show and we'll buy like $1 billion of, advertising, like Instagram ads and like all this stuff that just doesn't work for that, especially if it's not like a really clear like sales proposition for me, unless it's really clear like why we're doing this. And like an Instagram ad will get me if it's like, wow, this is a thing that I want or need, but like I don't feel like I need Quibi. But like, they're so used to this idea that you can get audience in two ways. One, you can buy with paid marketing. You can come in and have advertisements for your movie, and people will see those advertisements and they will go see the movie. Or two, that you can use star power and be like, okay, so look at all these famous people that are on Quibi. People will come and watch Quibi because famous people are on it. But like, fame has fractured. Paid marketing is a wet noodle, and like, if you have enough wet noodles, you can push some things, but it is a wet noodle and it's getting wetter. So, and like,
And when you're talking about the marketing in that standpoint, do you mean kind of more traditional and not like influencer based? Because I would say when you say like you can't pay for attention, I think places like, obviously it's through the same creator, but SeatGeek and Chipotle have done a fantastic job of utilizing David Dobrik to the point of like it became, for Chipotle, they had like this whole TikTok challenge. And it's just like when you see like the views stacking on top of the views, I'm like, okay. But I mean, yeah, as far as the advertising, like when Quibi launched, I had literally zero fucking idea what it was because the marketing that was out there was genuinely confusing. And then two, yeah, it was like I didn't see anyone I knew that I watched, any sort of influencer, go like seeming pumped about it, even if they were being paid to. Or I know that they had Liza Koshy on it, and I love Liza, but she's as probably mainstream as you can get when it comes to like someone that doesn't have a vlog but originated from YouTube. So yeah, it was just that felt weird. I will say, for some good news, there is maybe a world where it could make sense. I'm like, I know that the article said that he was going to stay on as a producer, right? Is that like an executive producer?
Yeah.
Is it going to be like when LeBron James is like executive producing some show and then he's like there for the first episode and then he like tries to pass the torch? But I will say it's going to bug a bunch of people. I think initially there's going to be a big drop off. But if they find the right personality, because they can throw a ton of money at it, it might work. But I would put the chances of success close to like 7 to 10%.
Well, especially if you're putting it behind a paywall that not a lot of people have access to. So like not many people have CBS All Access. I do, but I'm a Star Trek fan and I'm wealthy. So like that there aren't that many of us, right?
Where's that Hank Green shirt? I'm a Star Trek fan and I'm wealthy.
So, I'm paid to pay attention to media. So like I have subscriptions to everything. My yearly subscription budget has now exceeded what I would be paying for cable, which is amazing to get there. But yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes to like when I watched the last episode of Some Good News, which was like 3 days before they announced the sale, it's so clear that everybody is there for John. Like they make all this fan art of him, and he was like talking about how like it's all about us and like us doing this together, and it just felt like watching it before the announcement felt really sort of like lovely and nice. Watching it after felt really like tone deaf and confused. And because like personality matters, and really what matters is story. And this is the thing. It isn't John Krasinski as much. It's the story. The story is a famous, beautiful man who is rich and is getting nothing out of this, decides to come and spend time with people and make them feel better in a time when we don't feel good. And that's really good. Like that's a great story, and it worked really well. And it worked. It did exactly what it wanted to do. But where's that story now? Like now the story is Viacom CBS paid a bunch of money to have a thing to put behind a paywall, and the pandemic is now sort of like this overarching society level thing that we're going to be dealing with rather than sort of like crisis moding through. So we're like, instead of being in like lockdown, freaked out, we don't know what the future holds, we're like, okay, well, we still don't know what the future holds really, but like we've got a better handle on day-to-day life and we'll be figuring this out. And like, we just aren't in that crisis space anymore. Like not in the moment when like the power goes out in New York City and everybody parties in the street. Like that's what happens for the first day the power is out. But if the power is out for like 2 weeks, it's a crisis and you have to like handle it, and it's not fun anymore. And like, we're kind of in the not fun anymore stage. And like this thing was created by the lockdown, and like the lockdown is sort of lifting, and the story was really nice and pure, and now it's not nice and pure anymore. And that's the thing that makes me most sort of upset about it is like, even if it wasn't a lot of money, the perception is going to be, oh, so like we thought that like celebrities could be cool. And we thought that like this could be about something other than money, but turns out that it wasn't.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe you've known me for a long time. I'm a very cynical person. I mean, it's to a certain point, right? Isn't almost every celebrity that's kind of gone on these platforms, no matter how personable and charming they are, isn't it at the end of the day business? Like, yeah, sure, Kevin Hart probably likes to go on Instagram Live, but he also knows that it makes his contracts better because he gets to promote on his social platforms. Same for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Charming man, literally know nothing about him other than like, hey, he's in this video and he's charming and he's sharing a part of my life. Will Smith, same thing. It's like, we see him featured here. It turns into a YouTube original of him jumping out of a helicopter. Like I feel like there's always that. And I guess the question kind of for me becomes, well, it sounds so stupid because it makes us feel like children, but like, should we just be happy with what it is? Like John Krasinski, he's an actor, he's a director. As you said, this was a product of the pandemic and people self-quarantining. Are we looking at the better option of two things? Like it was either probably going to go away, or it's this thing that could potentially live on with him having a hand on it. That said, it sold within 2 months of it starting. So I think that's probably going to leave a bigger, like actually less, I think it was, it's a week
it's like
under
7 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think that's going to bug people. Cause I mean, you've done contracts, it takes a while. like was this after episode 1?
I know that we could be talking about this as like media people. And it's like, yes, when John Chris, like the first episode I saw, I was like, this is going to be huge for his next movie. Like like him doing this, he'll, in my guess is that he will make much more money from his next movie because of some good news than he will make from selling some good news. And that's the thing that's a little confusing to me about it, because like tainting the story kind of hurts that. And so like to me, it's like even maybe a bad business decision for him, because really what John Krasinski wants to do is be a superstar. He wants to be, Tom Cruise and have that 10 years of being paid, 9 figures or 8 figures per movie. And like some good news is a great way to sort of like increase that star power and like have a bunch of people have a really good positive affiliation with you. Selling it is a really good way to sort of like taint that. So I don't know. I find it perplexing. But I especially find it perplexing from the perspective of a media company that's supposed to know that like things are about ideas and stories, not about like the number of views is, I guess if it's getting 12 million views, it'll get 12 million views. Like it's only getting 12 million views because it's a good story.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of things end up selling when they're like, just imagine if we could get 1 to 10% of this thing that's available for free. And it's just
and like they'll probably get a good host for it. Like they'll probably get somebody with some star power to do it, and they'll spend some money on it. But it's not really Krasinski that I think is the linchpin. I think the story is the linchpin, and it doesn't make as much sense without him. It doesn't make any sense behind a paywall. It doesn't make any sense at a different time. That's the really confusing thing.
Yeah, well, because I will say to the point of a different time. I mean, we've tried to, back in the day when we had SourceFed and we had Joe Beretta at the top of SourceFed. We had a show that was all about him doing some good news. It wasn't called Some Good News, and people in other times not as interested. Now I think we are in this special time of escapism, or in the need of escapism. But yeah, I don't know. I think after 12 years of me immediately hating everything, I try and think of ways that things could work out. Because I could imagine this becoming like the heartwarming part of Ellen, but an entire show. And they're like, hey, look at this person that needed something. And everyone starts adding Ellen, right? It could be that. But to your point, behind a paywall is an issue. I think in one of the original articles, they were going to then window it to some of their other properties. Maybe that even includes YouTube, but they do lose the story to a certain degree.
I think it's important to recognize like why good news things don't work, and why it worked at that moment. Mm-hmm. So good news things don't work because we require tension in storytelling. Like what is the tension of the story? And, like that's why news is bad because like we're looking for the tension and the dynamics and like, it's the interesting thing. And good news doesn't, like, it's almost definitionally doesn't have tension. And it worked in that moment because we were all like, the tension was this overarching story of coronavirus, of COVID-19, and like society, like reality was providing the tension, and then like this was the thing outside that was like, sort of like being the sort of like end caps to the tension, or like providing a break from the tension. And those things are really important in stories. Like you got to have a moment where people like, are having like in a story where people are in crisis, there's always the moment where they like sort of sing a song together or something. And that like it's like some silly thing happens. And so like this was the silly thing that happened in the broader scope of tension. But like when there isn't the same sort of like universally experienced tension, what is this playing off of? So I don't know. I've come the other direction from you, where I'm a very optimistic person, but now I'm getting much more comfortable being like, when I see a bad idea, I want to be like, that's bad. Like Quibi's a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The way that I'm looking at things, I think for at the very least, the next decade, we're going to need forms of entertainment that are all about easing tension. It's going to be.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Maybe, yeah, that is absolutely a thing.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this special quarantine edition of the podcast. I just wanted to take a second to thank one of these sponsors of this episode of A Conversation with, Roman. In times like these, it can be especially hard to get treatment for common health issues, and Roman is a digital health clinic for men that's making high-quality care accessible and convenient, from connecting you with a U.S. licensed physician to delivering treatment from their licensed pharmacies. If you're dealing with conditions like allergies, heart health, or even more sensitive topics like erectile dysfunction, you want treatment ASAP. And our friends at Roman have spent years building a digital platform that can connect you with a doctor licensed in your state, all from the comfort of your home. Just grab your phone or computer, complete a free online visit, and you'll hear back from a U.S. licensed physician within 24 hours. And if a doctor decides that treatment is right for you, Roman's Pharmacy can ship your medication to you with free 2-day shipping. You also get free unlimited follow-ups with your doctor anytime you have questions or want to adjust your treatment plan, and you can cancel anytime. So just head on over to getroman.com/Phil right now for a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. So big thank you to Roman, and back to the podcast.
So somewhat connected to this, and I know is the other thing you want to talk about, Joe Rogan, at this point, once again, a week and a half, 2 weeks old. This is an immediate reaction. It seemed like you were not a fan of that as well.
I'm not a fan of platform consolidation.
Walled gardens, right? Or
yeah. So like and it doesn't even have to have a wall. Like Spotify doesn't have a wall. Like you can go in and you can have an ad-free podcast experience or an ad-filled free podcast experience on Spotify. And like I have come a little bit back on this as well. The only reason this might be good is if it provides some alternative to YouTube. So that is the interesting thing about this that I don't hear as many people talking about, is that Joe Rogan's podcast is not just a podcast. It is also a video show, and it is a very popular video show. And Spotify is, to me, the only player that looks like it could challenge YouTube in, sort of on-demand, user-generated video. Facebook just isn't like it. Facebook does it okay, and it provides like another version of it, but like it's just so like caught up in the feed, and the feed is such a thing and like an unavoidable part of Facebook. And like if I want to go back and watch a video I saw on Facebook, I have no idea how to find it. And whereas Spotify, I feel like, could be a place where user-generated content really starts to happen. I think going after Joe Rogan first is a really interesting way of doing that. I mean, obviously, he's the biggest personality in podcasting. Secondarily, he's a controversial figure. And so it's kind of like saying, look, like if YouTube's being all, like really touchy about this stuff, we're not going to be as touchy because like we're not as ad supported. We don't need to care about ads as much. And so like we want to be completely friendly and open to whatever kind of content people want to make. Even if it's going to be a guy who has platformed Alex Jones a couple of times. And that's like the fact that Joe Rogan made podcasts with Alex Jones is like the majority of what a lot of people know about him.
I mean, outside of his audience.
Yeah. But there's a lot more there, and I think it's worth understanding the other stuff that is there, and that it is in ways interesting, and that he is a very good interviewer, and that like there's reasons people like it. So not that like excuses like post Sandy Hook Alex Jones on your show. Like it's just freaking wild to me, but he has his own way of imagining the world that's different than mine. And so I think that like there's that piece of it that is interesting. Like if it can break some control that one of these platforms has, and I don't even know what to call them except platform. Like they're not media companies. They're like, but they are the ones who have all the control right now. then that's good. But what I don't like, but as a podcaster and as some person who loves podcasting and has loved podcasts for a long time, I love that podcasts are still based on this like ancient internet like system, like just RSS. Like it's as old as things get anymore, and it's open, and you can like, if I could create a podcatcher, like I could hire some people and like spend $200,000 and I could have an app that feeds podcasts to you. Like no one's in the way of that. Like Apple seems to have like intentionally, and I don't know if it's just because they don't care, but apparently it's not because they don't care, because they just said that they're hiring people to try and get some exclusive podcasts. Like they just didn't. For like they had all the market share in podcasts for a long time, and they didn't protect that at all, and they just like left the door open, even though they're a company that has more cash than like governments do. So it's wild to me that they sort of left the door open, and it makes perfect sense that Spotify would do it. And as a person who owns Spotify stock, I'm glad like the stock went up, I guess. But like as a creator, like what I'm worried about is that Spotify creates a place where it's easy to get audience and easy to get monetized, just like YouTube did. And like those are the two things that YouTube really does that creates good content on the platform. Like it creates an ecosystem where we will go to. And if Spotify can do that for podcasts, and then also like lock a lot of those podcasts in so they're not available anywhere else, then suddenly there's this giant company that controls all podcasters and controls all podcast audience, and is like it does the thing that the YouTube algorithm does to us, which is like, and it like kind of decides what content we make by deciding what content they feature. That's a scary thing to me, and I don't want it to happen to podcasts, which is like the last beautiful bastion of algorithm-free internet.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on it. I don't think that it's a place where there is a risk of it becoming a monolith, just because. Like,
I think you're probably right. I think they want to, but it's impossible.
Yeah, especially because there's some places that, like YouTube. I mean, look at YouTube in the gaming space, right? Too big to fail, too big to be for someone to compete with. But then in one specific avenue, you have a Twitch, right? Twitch ends up getting a huge, gets acquired, gets a huge amount of money. All of a sudden, everything seems great there. But then they're all of a sudden threatened by Microsoft and Mixer, throwing a crazy amount of money to take the biggest guy. Now, the difference there between like a Mixer taking Ninja and Shroud and several other big people is I feel like Spotify is way more established, way more accessible. There's not this negative connotation there. If anything, it was already kind of this positive thing for the everyman, because otherwise people like had Apple Music or Tidal, some right, which are more paid services. So it's like it's understood that it's supposed to be for the everyman. There are free services and premium, but then the effect is that all of a sudden Twitch starts throwing guaranteed deals to lock people down. YouTube starts locking people down. So if all of a sudden Apple is jumping into the game, then maybe YouTube goes, hey, this is another avenue where we have to lock people down. And so it ends up being, I understand, maybe not for everyone. It ends up being great for established people who lent their time and effort to giving these platforms success. Obviously, like YouTube is what it is, but to a certain degree, a lot of us were a big part of the rise. Little incremental parts, but parts that were very important. And even today, it's like little, bricks in the wall, slowly building and sustaining those things. So I think it's good. Obviously, I hope to try to benefit from it some way.
I mean, we could throw our little hooks in the water.
I think it's the only way you can make these platforms care about the actual creator, because otherwise we're just these things that, I mean, I know Rogan in the past talked about it in the sense of like, I think even talking about Spotify specifically, I could be wrong there, where he was like, why would I go there? There's literally no incentive. I'm going to give you this thing because what I get essentially like the fucking thing that artists had to deal with forever. It was like, I'll give you exposure. It's like, oh, cool. Fucking thank you.
Well, you get more audience than when you're Joe Rogan and you're selling a lot of earballs to also advertisers.
For him specifically, I see it being valuable for Spotify for several reasons. Not only, do they get the full show by the end of the year, not only it looked like in September they'll be able to partner with the company that he's been normally working with to sell ads, and they're going to potentially be introducing mid-rolls, right? So it's like all of a sudden potentially more money, is that he's still keeping his YouTube clips, right? So he's going to be making money on the things that are wildly acceptable to the people that were watching. And I think after the initial brunt of some people saying that he's selling out, which if someone offered me $100 to $200 million to I would put my shit on like toaster ovens exclusively. Like
just for clarity, I'm in the same boat. I will take, if anybody's listening right now, I will take significantly less than that to go exclusive on Spotify.
He's like, I'm against this. In theory,
this is the thing. This is the thing. Like we have to. We don't examine like individual decisions. We examine incentives. Like what are the reasons why people do things, and like how are those things going to be set up? And if we're now in like the podcast war is beginning now, and what I don't want is for me to need to subscribe to 4 different services to get all the podcasts I like. That's bad. That's bad for the user. It's bad for consumers. But the other thing that I will say is that there is right now no platform in podcasts. There just isn't. There isn't one. There's tons. You know, there's like the market share is all divvied up, and it's very easy for new entrants to come into that space. But ultimately, the platform, like my podcasts, are hosted on a server that I own. You know?
Oh, really?
And because I mean, I rent. I guess.
I was gonna say with Spotify, I feel like that's a thing that they're doing in a pretty intelligent way. Is that they're buying up kind of the different parts of the business and the railroad.
I know.
So like one of the smartest acquisitions, I think, it was like a company that a lot of people hadn't heard of, except because of Casey Neistat, Anchor, right? It's like they made it incredibly easy to upload the podcast, monetize it actually from that place, have viewer interaction with like essentially integrating a voice message line. And then it's like, and then it would show you, or then it would blast your podcast everywhere. But the main link where you could listen to it notably had like, especially now, has the Spotify right at the top. So it's like they're getting everything. It wouldn't really surprise me, and I don't even know if it's the case. I haven't opened up Spotify in a minute. Like it feels like if it's not already happening now, there's no reason that we don't have a world where that essentially becomes part of the Spotify browser.
Yeah, and it feels it makes a lot of sense. And you know, I think that if they can provide audience and monetization, then like. And a lot of those people, like if you're uploading through Anchor, and that means that you're only on Spotify, you know, that's a very different world than if you're uploading through Anchor and you're also available on all the other apps. So I just am like hyper aware of like, cause all of these companies want to create monopolies. Like that's what they want to do. That's what their shareholders reward them for. So I'm just aware of when people are trying to create monopolies in the last few space where they don't exist.
Yeah.
But it's a good point that like, you know, when, you know, Twitch like created something, and then like now, you know, Amazon owns it now, but like a lot of other companies have come to try and like challenge them on that. And like, it's like, we need to have companies challenging each other. What we don't need to have is companies trying to like create a monopoly out of thin air. Apple probably won't let them do it. And I think that a lot of podcasters and podcast listeners won't let them do it either.
Won't let them do it, like just because they'll revolt against the creator?
Well, they'll just continue using their podcast app. They'll be like, oh, like, so that podcast is going over there. Well, this is a world of infinite content, so I'm just not going to listen to that one anymore.
Yeah, but I think, and to that point, I think that's where it makes sense to grab a Rogan, because like I was the first person to tell my wife, and she was like, okay, well, I guess I'm downloading Spotify, which I know isn't going to 100% be everyone that listens to him's reaction. But I think that's what they're counting on, is there's enough.
Mm-hmm. And it makes sense to go after the biggest fish. So the people who get rewarded the most are the ones who have the most, etc. As usual. how it works. That's how it works.
That's how it works. All right. So Hank, here's what we're gonna do. Unless is there another topic in your head? Because otherwise, I'm gonna switch these cards and maybe learn something about you.
God, we have to continue the therapy session.
I saw a tweet that I felt very attacked by, and it was like guys and their podcasts during the pandemic is essentially just therapy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm proud of it. Like, where else are we gonna get it?
Yeah. I was like, I need everything to be a part of my personal growth and my business growth. That's we're all machines.
I have been listening to way more like podcasts that make me think about like the decisions that I make and like what I'm trying to do with my life than usual. I'm just like, tell me,
Hank,
people.
What's been your most recent breakthrough?
My most recent is that one of the cards?
No, it's not. But you saying that
that's
it made
a great question. Gosh, what's been my most recent breakthrough? Understanding that attention is like in terms of like understanding media landscape, which is a lot of what I do. Like understanding that attention is really the currency now, and like of course people need to turn that into money in some ways, and like Joe Rogan certainly has figured out how to do that in the last couple weeks, but ultimately, the first thing people are going to want to be doing is building that attention. Like it's very easy to turn attention into resources, into change, into community, into money, into education, into helping people, like whatever you want to do. But it's very hard to turn anything into attention. Like so, that's the hardest thing to get. So it's the true currency of the internet, which is a thing that people have known for a long time in terms of like how Google and Facebook operate, but it's less a thing that we've been thinking about in terms of media generally and in terms of the incentive of content creators. So that has been my major breakthrough in understanding my own business. But in terms of understanding my own self, that's a more important one.
Yeah.
If I've had a breakthrough recently, it is, oh gosh, Phil, I'm a little worried that my breakthrough recently is that I like it's a very similar thing that like I, want to make sure that I preserve my ability to influence the world positively, and that means thinking about myself as a media property, which I guess I've always done a little bit, but and this is also probably to do with like needing to promote my book, but I just need to suddenly have smart things to say so that I can go on podcasts and people be like, I should buy that guy's book, which is available July 7th, wherever books are sold. You can pre-order it now.
Where's my early edition, Hank? God.
Actually, I can send you one.
Really?
Let me, yeah.
I will 1,000%.
Awesome. I'll get it to you right now.
Wow. See? Squeaky wheel, baby. I hear you on that. So, but regarding converting things to attention, if you had more time or you were able to suspend your morality or your what would you do now to be to get more of that attention?
I'd love to make TikToks. Like I have ideas for good TikToks all the time, but I like no way in hell am I gonna like spend time growing a TikTok channel right now. And I don't even know if that attention would be that valuable to me as a 40-year-old science teacher. But I think it's a fascinating platform, and I think it's really cool. And I think that like if you want to hear a guess, my guess is that it's going to get spun off of its Chinese owner and become an American company in the next year. And so like this big problem that everybody has with it, which is that it's, owned by China or whatever, is going to not be a thing anymore. And what we'll realize is that the big problem with it was never that it was owned by China. It was that like all apps that get very powerful are dangerous to society. But it is a fun place. It is just a fun place, and it's about fun. And it's a little like, certainly there's politics on there and like people making fun of politics stuff, but it is it's just like the creativity of the platform is very good. But like from a person who studies creator economics perspective, it is a little worrying in a few ways. But I just want to make TikToks because I think that it looks like fun.
Yeah.
And I have ideas for TikToks all the time. So I'd probably make TikTok. And I'd also like every person like me, I want to have an interview podcast. Like I want to do this. I want to talk to interesting people and ask them interesting questions. And I would love to do that, but I have no capacity for it right now.
Yeah. I mean, because there are times where even I'm like, I could do that, or I need to do that. There are like 3 projects that I have right there. And every now and then I'm like, oh, I got the time, but I need to focus on me and just vent. So actually, for me, TikTok's become a little of that. I'm trying to watch less of it because it is an incredibly addictive app.
So yes,
but
deeply.
It's just nice to be able to make a 20-second video and be like, nah. Especially because it's kind of like in the sense of early days YouTube. It didn't need to be a certain level. You could fail there. And I really like that.
I'm terrified of that because the kids all know who I am because they learned biology from me. And what I'm worried is that I upload something to TikTok and then I go viral for the wrong reason. That's my huge
I don't
fear.
think there's
is that they're
literally,
like-
I don't think there's such a thing as, unless it's like inherently racist. I don't think there's a wrong reason on TikTok, because then
Yeah.
people are aware. Then you show them your more human side. Like that's for a lot of the biggest creators. Someone turned into a meme, or like everyone was piling on. Like I always end up, she's the biggest person on there now. I think of Charli D'Amelio because, you know, when she was at around 10 million, and it's continued, but especially around 10, 15 million after there was all this hype for like 2 months straight, it was nothing but screw this girl, she doesn't deserve it, and just the worst shit ever. And then the moment she was like, that's kind of hurtful to me, it flipped. And and it was like, oh shit, what we say is actually going to this person.
Yeah, that is encouraging. I know that how long are we going to record this podcast? Because I hope that it's 2 hours.
Yeah, if it's 2 hours, I'm good with it, man. It's literally just other people's time. I've made it so that this is the first thing that I'm reintroducing on top of my 4 time a week show, and then the moment I have 2 weeks in a row where I'm not stressed, maybe I'll reintroduce other work. But this is it, and because this is also, I mean, you use the word, it's therapy-ish. To me, it's relaxing. It's nice to connect to people, especially because my job is me by myself for 8 hours a day talking to an invisible man.
We should be aware and say out loud that this is not technically therapy, and that we also need regular therapy, and we should do our work not on a podcast. But also it's important to talk to your friends about like stuff. But this is not about me. It is about social media again. I got have you heard of Clubhouse yet?
Clubhouse, no.
It is it's a social app. It's in private beta, and it is basically a chat room app, except that it's all voice. Oh. So you like open up a room and you're like, I want to talk about this topic. And then like people can show up, or you can invite people in, and then like it's just all in your ears and in your brain. And it's it has made me feel strongly that like the human voice has been excluded too much from social media, and that the like voice-based content transmits so much more meaning, and it's so much harder to sort of like take, like to assume negative intent when you're hearing someone's voice. It's easier to assume positive intent, and like it is just a much more human experience. And I've been using Clubhouse for like 3 days now, and I'm like, I'm feeling that TikTok level of I kind of want to like open this app at every moment. Like I want to see what's happening on Clubhouse right now, even though there's like 2,000 people in the beta. So it's not like there's a lot of people there, but and like, you know, the conversations are sometimes you like pop in and people are like, you know, talking about football or something, and I'm like, next. But like, you know, sometimes they're talking about like stuff that's not inherently interesting to me, but I'm like, oh, I'm into it. Like, I don't know who these people are, and I'm listening to them talk. And sometimes I like turn it on so that I can talk to people, and it's really social, and it's really like feels human in a way that a lot of social media doesn't right now. But also it's very new, and who knows what it would turn into if, you know, everyone in the world had access.
Well, yeah, because I wonder how fast like the Xbox Live-ification of just everyone screaming at each other like an old COD lobby.
You really gotta police it heavily, I think.
But it sounds nice in theory, because I definitely agree. When I'm way more connected to something that I'm just listening to, whether it be on a drive or when I'm just sitting down, than when I'm actively watching a video. But it also might be because almost like 80% of the content that I watch, I'm doing something at the same time, unless it's like something that I would consider higher art that you super need to pay attention, right? Like or to appreciate. Breaking Bad, I think was one of the like biggest examples. Or if you just want to try and remember all the characters in a Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like those moments when you know like visual things are happening that if I miss it, I will not understand the episode. Those kinds of shows ask a lot of the audience, but there aren't that many of them.
So how would you compare the connection you feel to other people on this new app compared to maybe you scrolling through the comments on a YouTube video, or looking through replies on Twitter, or, you know, things like that?
On a YouTube video, you know, obviously it's one thing is all of these experiences are somewhat asynchronous, where like, you know, I've uploaded a YouTube video and now I'm getting a response. And if I want to respond to them, like I might do it, you know, 20 minutes after they post it or something. And so there's like all of this like divided attention that comes along with asynchronous communication. Text messages are the same way, where text messages, like in terms of like one-to-one or, you know, personal interaction, actual social behavior, text messages are asynchronous. And I think that sort of like asks divided attention of us. So this is very focused attention. And it is like but like, it's not like, there's something weird where a Zoom call to me asks too much, where like trying to like look at a person and like think I know what they mean by their facial expressions, or like, what are they doing? Are they looking at themselves? Are they looking at me? Like, how do I look? That is all taken out of this by just being voice. Mm-hmm. And that is appealing to me. And as opposed to Twitter replies, it's not nearly as different as it is from the Twitter feed, which is, I'm starting to believe, very bad. Like,
the Twitter
not
feed
like
is bad?
not like bad for me, but I think like in total, I think it might be worse for us to have a Twitter feed than not. And just because it makes me think that this is where I'm going to get my news now. So if there's any news, then like it's going to show up on my Twitter feed. But to check, I need to like scroll through, you know, for 5 minutes to check and make sure there hasn't been any news, which is just the worst way to get news. Mm-hmm. And I also get good jokes and pictures of cats and stuff, so that's good. But a lot of it is just, you know, the incentives mean that, you know, the most engaging stuff is often the most enraging stuff. And so that's a lot of what I'm seeing. And even if I'm trying to filter that out, you know, I can't filter it all the way out. And the stuff that I like the most about the platform, I find often isn't the stuff that keeps me coming back to it, which is a bad sign.
Wait, can you expand on that? What's that last point?
So the things that I want are very different from the things that I enjoy, Phil.
Okay. Yeah, I think you just described the human experience in a sentence. I didn't know that was possible.
And so like the things that I enjoy most about Twitter are not what I think about when I'm opening the app. Like a weird serendipitous connection, or you know, a really funny joke that someone told are not what I'm thinking about. When I'm opening up the app, I'm mostly thinking about, how did people respond to the thing that I wrote? I'm ashamed to say this, but yes, like it's like, especially if I wrote something a little bit inflammatory. Does everybody hate me? I want to like check and make sure once a day if everybody hates me for some reason, because that happens sometimes. Yeah. So like I've probably got a kindred spirit in that.
Yeah.
And is the world on fire? Like those are the things that's the craving I have. That's the hunger I have. And it's like being hungry for a thing that can never fill up, because the hunger returns basically the moment you close the app. Whereas the things I enjoy about it, and there are many things, like it is actually a fairly enjoyable experience. If it wasn't sometimes enjoyable, I really would think I'd get it out of my life. But the things I enjoy are connecting with friends, celebrating their successes, having serendipitous moments where, like, you know, some person who I respect likes my tweet or something, and you know, to some extent creating content that people enjoy. So like, yeah. And sometimes that's why I go to the app. I will often go to the app because I think of a good tweet, basically.
I sometimes wonder how on fire the world is based off of Twitter, because if not all the time now, but a lot of the time it's like, did you notice that a lot of the horrible stuff doesn't happen on weekends, and it's because we're all just like busy with other stuff. But that hasn't fully been the case, since obviously like days have merged as people are stuck. Yeah. But yeah, I hear you on Twitter as far as the experience. What are your thoughts? I think one of the dumber features that they've done was make it so you could hide replies, because it essentially just puts it in a box of. Have you seen that? You
can prevent them, or just not see them.
No, you can. So so you put something out there, and you go.
Oh yeah. You can hide an individual reply. But this is the wildest thing.
But it's so stupid, because it on the tweet, it lets you know that replies were hidden, and it puts them all. This is like, the person that posted this tweet doesn't want you to see what these people said.
These 4 tweets.
And I was like, why would you use that feature? But
and for a while there'd be a pop-up that was like, this tweet has blocked replies, and you're like, well, I mean, I'm not a drama fairy, but I do want to know what those are.
Yeah, 1,000%.
I will look at those first
I need
before
to judge,
I look at the other.
I need
replies.
to judge if they were just or they're just not open to criticism. But what are your thoughts regarding kind of the new at this time change to only allow certain people to reply? In the case of like Naughty Dog, who has had like a ton of leaks about their game, that was kind of like the number one example that I saw, and because people have been kind of trying to spoil the game for people, I was like, that I get. But what do you think outside of kind of that outlier situation?
Well, that's a choice that you get to make, and to me, like, it's a simple feature. It's a little click, and you know, I don't know why I would do it, but like, I also recognize that I'm a very different Twitter user than most people. Like, most people don't have hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and aren't a public person. So like, you know, if you for whatever reason, as a person with, you know, like, you know, just who are like, who you're making stuff with among your friends, and you don't like somebody to come in and like kind of ruin your experience, it makes perfect sense to me. So I think you can make it only people who follow me can reply, I think. And you can also make it only people I tag in this tweet can reply.
Okay.
And like, that second thing might actually be interesting because it's a way to, like, as a person with audience, I can be like, I don't care like, I really want to know what this person is thinking about this. And it's not like I don't care about everybody's opinion. It's like, I am calling this person out and I'm saying, hello, would you like to respond to this? Which to me is like one-to-one, and like is a little bit of a call out move, but especially because, like, I don't know that if I did it to like Susan Wojcicki, I don't know that she'd see it. Because it's not like she's on Twitter all the time.
But I could see it. Okay, so when you say it like that, I could see it as an interesting way to have collaborative, threaded, you know, when people do like 1 out of 20 or whatever like that. But if there could be like the actual growing of a conversation that's in public, in text, I could see that. I wonder if that'll actually be how it gets used.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times with these little features, we don't really, like, even the people who design them don't know how they'll be used. So I think that like giving me more choice in terms of how I connect with people on Twitter is probably, or giving more people more choice is probably good.
Hey, really quick, I hope you're enjoying this special quarantine edition of the podcast. And I just want to take a second to thank one of the partners of today's podcast, Pink One Network, to help fight pancreatic cancer. And you may have heard of pancreatic cancer before in the news, right? Since a number of celebrities like Steve Jobs, Patrick Swayze, Alan Rickman, and so many more have been lost to this disease. And pancreatic cancer is considered the deadliest cancer with only an 8% survival rate, and that rate has remained almost unchanged over the last 40 years due to underfunded research. Meanwhile, other types of cancer have seen their survival rates double or even triple in that same 40-year period. And Pink One is making incredible strides in understanding the various subtypes of the disease to develop the best possible treatments, and every donation gets them closer to that goal of raising the rate. And that's where you and I come in. Personally, I'll be donating a portion of the proceeds from today's video to the cause. And if you'd like to contribute as well, you can click on that link in the description down below to donate. And every little bit helps fund research that could save thousands of lives. And so if you're able to help at all, thank you in advance. If you don't have it, definitely share. But that is it for now. And back to the podcast.
Hank, I'm gonna flip this on you because you said that you want to have a podcast. What's something you want to ask me?
Phil, what's the thing that's scaring you the most right now?
That I don't always want to do what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's a big one, man. And like figuring out, you know, like you have two choices there. And I've dealt with this a lot too. And what do you think the two choices are?
The two well,
what do you think? Like, cause to me, you can either be like, I'm going to be okay with this, or I'm going to find a way to love it. Like, I'm going to be okay leaving this, or I'm going to find a way to love it. Like, those to me, like, you can't, like that middle thing where you just do it even though you don't like it.
Yeah, no. So here's the problem. Well, because every day is different.
Right.
I'll take the week that we're making this. I felt like 2 out of my 4 shows were good. Like that, I was like, I'm proud of that. Like, I don't even fucking care what public reaction is. I'm proud of that. We accomplished something for everyone that I'm kind of aiming for regarding domestic news, understanding the real potential threat of what we're looking at over the next 8 months. Well, actually, next several years. And then also, I broke down an internet story and covered it in a way that wasn't full on drama, and it was more from a business standpoint. I was like, I felt like Okay, I fucking nailed that. But then, it's to a certain degree, you're at the mercy of what's happening. And even what we end up covering, like there's always just like a natural evolution. And I've come to realize over the last 14 years that, it ebbs and flows. There are peaks and valleys regarding my own interest. First week with where people were self-quarantining because coronavirus pandemic. A lot of people very, very interested, but then you get 2 to 3 weeks in, people are just exhausted by the overwhelming kind of same news. So we're always, it's sometimes not even, there's no forethought in it. Everything kind of just changes and evolves. And so, and I think the idea of, like, don't do it if you're not feeling it. I think the reason I sometimes push myself through that is I know emotionally that feeling won't stay, but I do know that those of my friends that did abandon the platform or didn't, I don't want to say maximize, because even with a lot of young creators that I end up talking with, I constantly preach, like, don't fucking burn yourself out. I know you feel like you're going to miss out on an opportunity if you're not going 120%, but this is, if this is successful for you, this is a fucking marathon. I'm constantly battling with it, but I think, me taking the steps like I did several weeks ago to be like, even though it's going to hurt views, I'm taking 3 days off. Right. And even that, I know that it's still weeks ago, but with how long I've done it, it feels so recent. Like I had forgotten that if I express a vulnerability one time, not always, because then people are like, you're such a downer. But if I express a vulnerability, that other people feel less alone with that same vulnerability and that same kind of thing. So
it's a kind of strength too, like to say like we have this relationship. And like it's leaning into the same authenticity that is always the thing of YouTube. That is always, and that is really sort of like what we build a lot of, the things we make on, which is saying like, like it's not that I'm not grateful. It's not that I don't like love parts of what I do. It's that like right now I need to take a break, and like it's just hard, and people like and like expecting that people will support you in that. And allowing them to, and that's really hard when a lot of the sort of cultural, like a lot of this sort of young man culture is around like hustle and push and go and go and go. And I think that that's really important. And like when we have the fuel to go, we should go, and we should find the ways to, as Dr. Mike said, push through I can't in the moments when like we're being held back by something that is in our way. But also like we also need to be able to like take care of ourselves and find the balance between those things. Because one thing I know is like when I talk about what I want versus what I enjoy, like every morning I want to stay in bed, but I don't enjoy it, but I want to. And like knowing how to tell the difference between those things and get to the things that I enjoy and work through the moments when what I want is self-destructive is really important. And it's been and like I'm 40 years old and I'm still figuring it out.
Would you? Maybe that's what happens when we die. It's we don't see our whole life doesn't flash before our eyes. It's just like this is what the answer was. Bye. That's what happens. Yeah. That's way too dark. All right.
Right. And I know there's just a lot of responsibility, like on anybody who does what we do, there's a lot of responsibility, but also when, you've got a business that is, like it rests on not just on your shoulders as a business leader, but as a content creator, and not just a leader of your team, but also like you are the, and like I'm very much the same way, and have tried to find ways to have other people take on some of that responsibility. But like, it's hard to be a YouTuber, and like not everybody can do it, and not everybody can sort of like connect with an audience in the same way. And so it's a huge amount of pressure. And I find that oftentimes the pressure is the thing that's that's turning off something in my craving of it. And little ways for me to hack that are really important. Like, I was looking forward to this conversation all week. And so like, I like, it's almost like there are certain things I don't want to put on my calendar because then I look and I'm like, ugh. Like, and just like the fact that it's on the calendar, like makes it worse than it already is. It's just like, why, like this thing being needed, like if I was going to like have that conversation right now, I wouldn't bother me at all. But the fact that I have to like wait to have it is very terrible. I hate it. Can you just call me right now? But having this on my calendar all week was really nice because it was like, oh, I'm going to get to talk to Phil for a long time. And that, like, I love this kind of conversation. And I haven't talked to you in so long that I was really looking forward to it. And like having that there kind of like made the whole rest of my week better.
Wow. That makes me feel great about me. No, but I genuinely feel what you're saying. I mean, even us kind of bring this podcast back. My initial thing was, depending on if I'm, initially I was going to try and reach out to everyone, and then I was like, no, just I'll have my producer do it. But I was like, literally only have people I either already know or I'm like a big fan of already, or there's a history, because I just the idea of having a first conversation with other than Andrew Yang, who I was a big fan of, but I had never talked to before. I was just like, I just don't want to have this conversation. It's kind of the same thing of what, I don't know. We've had talks about the podcast when, I want to say earlier, last year, about getting a booker. And I was like, I don't want to have other people on just because they're doing the rounds. Like, obviously you're doing stuff for your book, but it's like that I'm gonna have to, like, I'm a genuinely awkward person with people I don't know, or because I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert that, you know, I talk to people, but I talk to myself, and then other people see it. So no, I feel that it's there was a sense of looking forward. I had Joe Beretta on last week, and I was like, I haven't talked to that guy in forever. Yeah. Which I will say,
I love Joe.
Yeah. Jumping back, I didn't realize how emotionally attached people were, because obviously it was a different beast near the end. I didn't realize how emotionally attached people were to SourceFed as having been a thing until it was when things were getting shut down. I think you tweeted something along the lines of like, it hit you in an emotional way. And I was like, oh, that's right. I guess it was this thing for a while for a lot of people, even though near the end it was this whole different beast and views weren't what they were. I was just like, oh yeah. And so, and it is one of those things of I'll look back, and obviously I put romantic glasses on. I only think about like, oh, the fun times in the writer's room in the morning and shit like that. But yeah, and I think that also seeing that reaction, that's part of me when I'm having those weird in between times that I'm like, I'm just going to push through it. Cause one, I like this thing that we've built. And then secondarily too, I know just give it enough time, I would hate not having it, like having just that connection with people and losing it. Cause yeah, the things that bring me joy when I'm not making videos, they're just temporary escapes. It's not like I do not want to always garden. I do not. That is not my new go-to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, then that's called a farmer, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm not built for it. Not anymore. There was a time. All right. So, oh my gosh, this is the latest we've ever gotten to the cards. Here we go. We're gonna learn about each other.
That was my goal. That was what I was trying for. Okay, let's go.
Oh no. Okay, Hank. What concerns you most about your future?
Gosh, I'll tell you what, I don't think a lot about the future. I guess I'm worried that my son might be a jerk. Like that he'll grow up to be just a big douchebag, like and I guess like I don't like. Okay, here's and this is not the same thing, but I am really not looking forward to the first time that Oren like hates me. Which is going to happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like he's going to like
hate you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right to your face. And like it's nothing. Like it's fucking nothing.
Yeah. And like teenage years, I'm worried about. I'm worried about him going into college or whatever we have then, because maybe we won't have college anymore. And I'm worried about like, yeah, his ability to sort of like make his way in the world. I'm somewhat worried about like him having a public figure for a dad. I'm somewhat worried about, you know, how you like, you know, I live in a small town and probably will for his whole childhood. And I'm worried that like he'll be treated differently by his peers for that reason. And I'm worried that like by the time I'm dying and he's, my age, that like the world will be worse than it is now in a lot of measurable ways. And I know a lot of people sort of struggle with that as they're deciding whether or not to have kids. But ultimately, I think that like we need people there to be part of the fixing of the problem. And I hope that he's part of the fixing of the problem. And I think that most people are, like in all of the different thousands of ways. But I do worry that like the world is just going to be rougher for him than it was for me, just because of whether it's climate change or whether it's just more sort of geopolitical instability, because like we don't have the same hegemony that we had growing up, where the US was like this thing and everybody else was like, well, the US is in charge, so don't try and challenge that. But if that has to switch a little bit and like people have to figure out who's in charge now, then that doesn't tend to look good historically. So I worry about both from a like a climate perspective and also from a geopolitical perspective, that the world's going to be a harder place. And also like, I don't know what it's like to be raised with a dad who's a, well-known YouTuber, science teacher, author. And I don't really know how to raise that kid. So you tell me. I will ask you when the times come.
No,
to be help.
What I wanted to ask you, because that's one, obviously, yeah, it's people watch both of us, but I'm in LA. Are you like the famous rich guy where you live?
I have the most Twitter followers of anyone in Montana. Which I discovered in a BuzzFeed article.
You're like, I keep track of it on this TV behind this shelf.
No, there was a BuzzFeed article that was like the person with the most Twitter followers in every state.
Oh,
and everybody tweeted at me. And they were like, hey, look. Yeah. So, a little bit and a little bit not. Like, I think that the way that fame is fractured, like, means that people kind of, like somebody once, like, will, like, I'll like make friends with somebody at a coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I went to coffee shops, and then a month later he'd be like, "Oh, I heard about you." So we like it's not like they definitely know me when they meet me, but eventually they figure out, they're like, "Oh, you do things. You're a thing doer.
You're the so and so guy."
Yeah,
like that's your description.
And like I live in a town that's small enough where like I know by sight all the guys who own Teslas, because there's only 3 in town. And so like eventually you see the guy getting out of the Tesla and you're like, that's one of the Teslas.
See, that's because I don't know what that is. Cause I like, obviously like I'll meet people and there'll be some people that are like just so excited, but in general, I still don't matter in LA, which is kind of a nice thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like I'm on the low end of the high end. And I feel like that lets me stay a little bit, tiny bit grounded. But okay, so to the other point though, regarding kind of raising your kid, are you worried that you're just gonna give and there might not be that kind of like you have to work for it thing? Because I've found myself, my son just turned 6. I've found myself having to actively not give when I want to, because I'm just like, because also a lot of the time it's something we can both enjoy. So it's me practicing something I haven't had to practice in a while, where I was like, oh, I have to wait for this thing. But I think it's so, for me, it felt so incredibly important, because I remember once I had even the slightest bit of audience, I had like a lot of ego, and I felt like the world owed me everything and should give me everything. And so I was just like, how fucking destructive would that be at 10 and 15 and 20? But you're kind of almost at that point, right? Because you have a little person that's starting to going to start remembering stuff. Yeah. And
I think about that, and what I try and tell myself is like, this thing isn't actually going to make it, like, it's not going to solve the problem that we're having. It's not going to actually make him much happier. And so like, if I'm trying to solve the problem of him being like mad that he doesn't have the thing, like, this is like getting the thing is a very temporary solution that only leads to this happening again. So yeah, I worry about that on sort of a larger scale, where it's like, how do I make sure that that he understands like his place in society, that like not everybody has the same advantages that he has, not everybody has like the same like he can't expect that his friends will be able to do the same things necessarily. Like, you know, there is a trampoline house in Missoula, and like we go to the trampoline house fairly frequently, used to. This is a disease factory at the best of times. But like not everybody in his peer group can afford to just like drop and go to the trampoline house, because it like costs a bunch of money. And like Catherine and I will both get tickets, we'll both go, we'll all be jumping, and like most of the parents like pay for their kids and then sit. And because like it's ludicrous to be like, I don't like, I'm just going to hurt myself. Like, why would I pay for the chance to get a broken ankle? But yeah, like, you know, cause like that, you know, that $30 isn't that important to us, but for a lot of people it is. And I want him to know that. And I want him to know that like adjusting your behavior to like make your, to like make it so that more people can be included in your fun is way better than having more expensive fun. So like that's the stuff that I want to get across, and like ideally not have to say out loud for a while, but then eventually make it clear. Like not like I mean, we don't have to say it out loud. We'll just live that way.
Yeah. What I've found is that there are, as I try and teach my son these lessons before incidents come up, they're like random blind spots that I miss. Cause like with our son, you know, we explain, you know, some people have, you know, mommies and daddies. Some people have two mommies, some have two daddies, and thought we had fucking everything covered. And then one day my son came back from a summer day camp, and he never understood that some people don't have a mommy or don't have a daddy. And yeah, he wasn't making fun of this kid, but he was like, what are you talking about? And kept asking this kid. And so the kid was taking it as like an attack. And I was just like, okay, so here's another conversation. and here's what we're going to do to try and make this okay. So yeah. So I've just kind of made peace with the fact that I'm gonna miss some things, and then we'll go. I'm trying to make him an empathetic child. But yeah. Okay, wait. So back to the cards, kind of touching on something that you kind of mentioned in passing. How are you most like your father, and how does that scare you?
And you're just asking me questions. I'm not asking you questions now?
Yeah, I realize that I like having the power on my podcast. You can, at any point you can switch it on me, but I'm not prepared.
This is hard because my dad is like the best. You've met my dad, right?
Maybe at a VidCon?
Maybe at a VidCon. Yeah, he's always there. Yeah, he's extraordinarily kind. He's really all about, like, it just doesn't seem like he cares that much about himself. He just like wants to make things better for other people. But he's also not a pushover. Like, he'll fucking stand up, and like he's adventurous too. Like, he became a pilot accidentally once, and didn't tell my mom about it, and that was like the biggest fight they ever had.
I became a pilot on the down low. I like that.
Yeah, no, literally, he became a pilot without telling my mom, because he knew that she wouldn't like it. It's like his version of cheating on her, I guess, with an airplane. And yeah, I am like my dad in a lot of ways, I think that it's hard for me to have like thoughts about my dad that are bad. I'm sure that I had them at one point.
I was like, let me throw it on you, and it's in a positive light. Do you ever feel like you are too nice, or that there's something that is bad about you trying to accommodate for others?
It may be, but like, I think that when. Yeah, I mean, I think that I could run a business faster and grow it faster and have it be bigger and like go harder, and so there is that stuff where but I don't think that any of the people who work for me would be happier. I think that they might be richer. I think that but like, you know, I also think that there'd be an awful lot of them that I never think about at all. so like when it comes to like maximizing my happiness, probably not. And that's something that I think about, like is maximizing happiness the right frame? Like, is trying to find the ways to do the things that I really want to do and focus on that rather than like having the biggest impact or changing the things that need to be changed the fastest. So there I think if I were a little bit more ruthless, that I could definitely accomplish more, but I also think that like that ruthlessness would not just like make me a little less happy, but also like it would mean that the things I was accomplishing might not be as good for the world. That's an interesting dynamic there, where I think people who like really believe in their mission are like, I don't care if like every teacher in the world loses their job. I don't care if like if I put a bunch of things out of business. Like change is going to happen, and I might as well be at the driver's seat because like I think that X or Y is the future, and so like when I've had ideas that are that are really like change agents, I always have a really hard time implementing them because I think about all the people who whose lives will be disrupted by them. So in that sense, like maybe, because like I think that those good ideas should exist, and I think that like just because like people's lives will be disrupted doesn't mean that like change shouldn't happen.
Right.
Because like I think that we shouldn't have any coal miners. Like, I think that's a thing. I'm sorry. Like, we should not be burning coal. It's bad. And so like stop digging it out of the ground. But like that will happen, and it has to happen. And then like the spectrum of where else that might land, I probably fall pretty close to don't disrupt. And I think that maybe this is the thing. I might want to be liked too much, Phil.
I think that's a lot of people online. And actually, I think that connects to this next question. How do you think, I liked asking Joe Beretta this question. How do you think I want to be perceived? How many times is this card in this deck?
You, Philip DeFranco, or me, Hank Green?
No, how do you, Hank Green, think I, Philip DeFranco, want to be perceived?
I feel like you've asked this question 3 times. You just want people to tell you this.
I think it's just in this deck like 12 times. There's legitimately 200 cards. I don't know how. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so like Philip DeFranco right now, as opposed to Philip DeFranco, maybe 10 years ago.
I love that everyone keeps, hey, actually rightfully so, I think, separate the two, but yes, continue.
Well, this is wild. When I told Catherine I was going to be on this podcast, he was like, oh God, he's going to come for you and like try to get you. And I was like, no, he's not. You haven't watched Phil in a while.
I've talked to someone recently that had concerns about coming on because they thought I was looking for some gotcha. And I was like, look at literally every podcast. I was like, there's one person that it ended up going in a weird place, that it was just because there was big discrepancies between their answers, and I had nothing to fucking do with it. But yeah.
It's their own thing. I think that you want to be, seen as nice. I think that you want to be seen as positive force in the world. And I think that you want to be seen as I'm right in this boat with you. I think that you want to be seen as sort of an innovator and a like pioneer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I take a lot of pride in, and that like I think that we kind of share. And I hope that you want to be seen as a good boss, but I don't know very much about that part of your life. I definitely think that you want to be seen as a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably matters to you more than a lot of perception around you these days. And that like, ultimately, I think that we are probably correct in this, that like the way that we handle our families, the way that we, the responsibility that we have there is, it is not as large, but it is far more important in a way than the responsibilities like that like people who sort of take that responsibility seriously, like that really matters. And I think that you want to be seen as tall.
Like every man, tall. No, I feel like you pretty much nailed it. I mean, I think I'm living in a time of less of what I wanted before. Like when I mentioned earlier, like I'm concerned I don't want to do what I'm currently doing. Right. Years ago, I set myself on a path of I always have to be building this other thing that is bigger than me. Right. It has to be this thing like, but but then I look back and I'm not inherently a guy that cares about legacy. Right. I'm not someone that wants a street named after me or some fucking statue or, I think about the now, right. The people impacted or that were educated or have an opinion about something, even if it's not mine because of my videos, that's where I get the value there. And then I realize like, what is all this other stuff that I'm doing? Right. Is it something because I want people to be like, wow, look at Phil, he built that thing. Does that fucking bring me joy? No, it doesn't bring me joy. And if it's not something that is special or provides something that I'm not already providing, why do it? And so I think that a lot of the things that I've been looking at more recently has been about, pulling back. What can I maximize? What experiences can I get with my family? So like actually taking breaks where I normally wouldn't and enjoying that. And then making little side businesses that the show does. Like we're, we have the hair care stuff. Thing. No, but it's like, we have the hair care stuff, which is like really fun. It's like, it's something. And then we're working on a coffee line now, but we don't want it to be a YouTuber coffee. So it's like, it's something that we could do. And those are the things that end up exciting me. We've recently refocused on merch, but doing it in a way that it feels like streetwear, like an actual brand. And I'm like, is that changing the world? No, but it makes me feel creative in a different way that I get to work with, really people that are smarter than me or more skilled than me in a different avenue. And that's been very refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love to create things and whether that's a video or a business or actualizing some kind of idea or just like having an idea that sticks in my head and helps me understand the world. Like that's a kind of creation too. And that's a lot of what drives me. I feel like creators sort of like have this arc that I've only after a decade of this been able to identify where it was really first about attention. And like, it's really first about like making something that people are going to pay attention to and that's going to affect someone and it's going to make them laugh or it's going to make them think. And like, that's all that matters. And like, that's where like almost every TikToker is right now. And then like at some point it gets to be that like your graphs change a little bit and like, being able to sustain this activity is more important, like to find ways to make money off of it, to have it be your job. And then like, and like, it's almost as if like you have enough of this that you realize that like, one, you have enough, and two, that having more isn't going to make you much happier. So like those are two different things. So you have to have enough before you can realize that more isn't going to make you much happier. So first you have enough, then you realize it's not going to make you much happier to have more. And then like that happens with audience, and then it happens with money, and then it happens with, and then like eventually you get to a point where, and like not everybody gets here, where it's like what's fun though? Like, what do I like doing? Like, what is the weird thing I can do that's interesting? And I think that it is so easy if you are sort of plugged into a certain ecosystem to, with money, never get there where you realize that more isn't going to make you happier, especially when you got agents talking in your ears or like all your friends are spending money in really wild ways that make you want it, even though it's not making them happy, it's making you want it anyway, even though it never makes you happy. And like you spending money makes other people spend money. And it's like this wild. And I think that in general, like we are so good at following the paths that are put in front of us. And taking the moment to be like, okay, but like, what about that way? That doesn't look like a path, but it is a direction. And so maybe I can find that direction. And I think like, hair care and coffee and streetwear and like all that stuff is like, that's a direction. It's not like a path that was laid out in front of you. And I think that everyone is a little bit struggling with the difference between the path in front of them and the direction that is a little bit obscure and weird, and they don't know. Like, it's not just that you don't want to go down the path. It's that like the path is it's clear. Like everyone knows where it is. And for so many people that the path is pretty good or maybe great. But for a lot of people, like the path isn't great. And so you have to go someplace and like, you can't see it. You don't know what's on the other side of those bushes. Like, and that's scary, but can be really rewarding for people when when we have the opportunities to do it, which is of course not everyone.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm sorry, I'm just enjoying these questions because they're touching on a lot of the same thing. When thinking of the past, Hank, is it nostalgic or painful? Why?
Oh, it's nostalgic.
Yeah.
And I think because I don't have a lot to be painful about, the main thing.
So wait, then let me insert my own question on top of it. Do you feel like your best moments are behind you?
I mean, in some way, yeah. Like in terms of my career, probably. But in terms of my happiness, I don't think so, and I hope not. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with Oren where I learn from him, or he understanding his personality more, and watching that sort of really come to be him, and seeing him fall in love or make something special or different, or just all of the stuff that I loved doing. I feel like I'm going to love watching him do it more than I loved doing it myself. And and also I hope that in those, in that next 30 years ish, that I will also have times when I get to help other people. And I've done this some already. We've got to help other people realize their dreams, talented people, give them an opportunity, help them be there when they have questions about something that not very many people know about, which is this business. And that is really rewarding to me. And it's weird how helping someone else achieve their dreams can be more rewarding than achieving your own dreams. That's wild to me. I would never have thought that would be true, but it is 100%. I feel better about helping other people succeed than I feel about succeeding.
I was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm there. If I'm being if I'm being truly honest, and I'm not thinking what public perception would be. For a child, yes. For someone for someone that I'm related to, but then it's how much, then if I get really introspective on it, how much of that is because I'm happy that they are achieving something and they're getting this experience, and how much, kind of to go back to that question, because of how it would reflect upon me, right? Is that a parental thing?
Right. That's a part of it. Yeah, I think. But I don't know that until you try.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, do you feel good about helping Joe and Elliot and Lee and Steve, and do you feel good about helping them along their careers and getting them into a place where they could make some really beautiful, creative, weird stuff? That's so great to me.
And there's levels to it, right? There's levels to it. When I had Joe on, and we had this really candid chat, because much like you said, who I am is different depending on what year you're talking about, or what not generation, but yeah, what Phil you're dealing with. There is part of me that's genuinely happy that I was able to give the opportunity for incredibly talented people to do something special in the moment and use it as a way to launch into a different avenue. But there's also stuff that's self-serving, the fact that people are wow, Philip DeFranco found these people, right? And that I get to wear that as this kind of notch on my belt, or something like that. There's always going to be part of that that's connected to it. Or when we sold SourceFed way back in the day, and it was oh, now Phil's a shrewd businessman. So I think when I reflect back, I think I might have cared about public perception more than is really healthy, because it doesn't matter. But that's the unfortunate thing, is you don't really learn that until much later.
I think it matters. I think it matters, because it's it is reflected in reality to some extent. Of course, you didn't find Steve Zaragoza on a park bench somewhere. He was doing cool, interesting things, and Joe was an old school YouTuber.
Well, that's the thing though, is Steve, I will say I feel especially proud of, because he was working as an editor, I believe, at Sony. So
okay, maybe he was sitting in a park bench somewhere. So I feel a happiness and pride with that, especially for me with Joe Beretta. It was just an honor. But I mean, all those people, Lee Newton's easily one of the most talented people that I've ever come across. And then and it's just, I don't know. It's a mixed bag. There's a reflection of reality in that. So it's not just that you like it; it's that you like the reality of it. You like that because this is a very Phil DeFranco thing, where you're you feel good about something and like you're getting the validation this way, but you're not doing it this way. You're only getting it from outside, not from inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're saying that, like it's all about this external validation, like there is reality to that external validation. Like when people are like, thank you for helping me, like get through nursing school. Like, I'm not saying like I only like that because it's from the inside. I like it because it's an objective reality. Like I helped them get through nursing school. Like when Dr. Mike was talking about that moment where he helped, like he heard later that he helped someone even though he didn't remember it. Like those are reflections of reality. They're not external validations. They are signs that you did do a good thing. Mm-hmm. And so like trying to incorporate that and let that be like actually fuel internally, because like, yeah, the external validation is good, but it is also a reflection of a thing that is real.
Yeah.
So I think that like that, yes, check that out. See if it's there. I think it might be.
I'm going to explore it. I mean, even talking about it now, I'm like, does a lot of it not come from internal validation? Because then I was like, why? And the fucking voice in my head was like, just now is like, maybe it's because you feel like any success you have is just something you haven't fucked up yet. it's eventually going to happen. Eventually there's going to be that person that's like, you change. And it's like, yeah, we both fucking changed. And it just, we parted paths. We're like, oh, I feel like you're something different. It's like, yeah. So I don't know. But yeah, that was an interesting question.
Yeah, no, I definitely, that when you're doing something big and like anything like that, there is all like, I think that the voices in our heads are different volumes. But the things that can really go wrong, there is always that thing telling you that like this successful thing is just a thing that you haven't screwed up yet.
Yeah.
Oh God. And sometimes you have to sell a business just to have that voice go away.
you have so many, or you've had so many. What do you?
Yeah, no. I mean, VidCon was very hard to own. It was very hard to own.
I cannot imagine. I'm glad you guys acquired TanaCon though. Okay, so what's the most important thing you didn't do that you should have done? And I think this is going to be the last question from the cards.
There were a couple of moments, and it's always like, who the heck knows?
Right.
Because like I probably had lots of ideas for things I should have done that turned out to be very good that I didn't do them. But I had a moment early on when I was like, we're making 2 YouTube shows. We should probably make 20. We should like I thought in like 2008 that we were really late to the YouTube game.
Oh, wow.
And then when we first started like making shows like CrashCourse and SciShow, I thought to myself, like, this isn't going to be like TV where there are a few things, like early TV, where there are just a few things. This is going to be like now TV, where there's like hundreds or thousands of shows or tens of thousands. And like they will be owned things. And there's going to be a lot of power there. And so I was like, maybe I should sort of go all in and like move to LA and get some venture funding and like make like lots of stuff, like make hundreds of shows and basically do BuzzFeed. And I think that would have been successful and that I'd be, a media mogul. Except that I would still have been me. And I would still have been like wanting everybody to like me. And I would still have I wouldn't have been the guy from Barstool Sports, right? I wouldn't be that guy who's like, oh, you don't like the way I do it? Well, then let me do a rant on Twitter about why you're dumb. Like I would still be me, like not wanting to make enemies. And,
But I think that's also why Portnoy stands out, because you usually don't have heads doing that. And especially...
well, you do more and more because it's turning out to be an effective strategy.
Well, it's various. I mean, even the Caller Daddy stuff that we talked about in like an extra bonus video, how many other companies is it where someone like leaves, there's not a lot understood about the contract, and it's the company that looks like they fucked up? Having like a big, notable, loud as the key word, voice, is like That's the future, man. And that's
attention is the asset, as I said, my big insight. And I think, he has it. Elon Musk has it. Like sure. Donald Trump has it. Like they know. I'm not putting those people into the same like box as human beings, but like people who understand that like building an audience, gathering attention is just as important as like the other thing that they're doing, and are really good at it. So I think probably it would have eroded my soul and turned me into a smooth rock of sadness. But so like, no, that isn't a thing I should have done. What should I have actually done? I probably should have been more critical of YouTube early on. Part of me thinks I should have like this will always be a thing, and people who know me well know this, that like part of me wishes that I had, gone for like basically said like Vidcon isn't going to grow, it's going to shrink, and been like, this is about this group of people, and like somebody else can make a conference for the other people. And like it made perfect sense to me, and I think might have been the right call to say like, this isn't a conference about the people I like. It's a conference about online video, and that means that it's going to try and be like broad and huge and inclusive, and we're going to have sponsors, and we're going to have to pay for all these people, and like we want like hundreds or even like 1,000 featured creators, and like we're going to basically rent out an entire hotel and fill it with featured creators. And that's still going to leave a lot of people left out, and it's going to hurt, and I'm going to hate it. But like, that's going to be where we're at. We're going to do what we can. And versus being like, we're not going to try and reflect all of online video. We're going to like just do this fun little thing. And I might be a happier person if VidCon was like a little fun thing. I wouldn't have been, but I would also own it right now during a pandemic lockdown, and I would probably be going through a bankruptcy proceedings. So that would suck.
So is that you saying that that's when you enjoyed it more?
Oh, of course.
Well, because you
like
actually,
when I walked into a room and I knew
it.
every single person. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like now I walk into a room at VidCon and I'm like, where's my friends?
I can't even imagine that, like how many times for you VidCon must feel like just a lot of people yelling, why wasn't I invited?
Oh God. Yeah, no, that was the sensation of running VidCon. Yeah. And like, not to say that that doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. Sure. And like good friends of mine we didn't invite, and they were like publicly on Twitter being like, I guess VidCon doesn't care anymore. And I'd be like, I mean, I guess I do, but like, the world is changing, and like we have to, like, if we invite the same people every year, then like that doesn't make the thing work. And so it was a problematic company to be a public facing CEO of, especially a public facing CEO who likes to be liked. But going to VidCon now is like super surreal and also like euphoric. Because it's like, look at this big thing that's good and that people enjoy being at, and that I don't have to think about or worry about.
Well, yeah, because on, I guess, the last year that it happened, how many people-ish went through it?
I think that it was... so the way that things are counted, I always need to couch this. So the way that things are counted in conference world is like... not uniques, but impressions.
Sure.
So if somebody comes back the next day, they're counted again.
Okay.
So the VidCon goes on for like 5 days, and not everybody's there every day. So like, I think that by that metric, it was in the hundreds of thousands.
That's
but like in terms of uniques, which is how I think it should be counted, I think it was like 30 or 40.
That's such a crazy number.
I know. There are 60,000 people in my town.
Yeah.
It's very weird. It's like I get to be the mayor of like my town for 3 days. But yeah, it's really surreal, and the people who make it are really wonderful, and I still really, really enjoy it. Like there's just a part of me that wishes it was like the Joko cruise, which is this cruise for nerdy people that I've been on, which is just like it's a lot of the same people, and it's like it's like really intense, and the people pay more for it, but it's much smaller. So it's like exactly your people and only your people. I do miss that.
I'm trying to remember. So are you in a position where you have like 1 year left with VidCon of like as part of a handoff? Because I remember it feels like it's been forever. So maybe it's already done and you're still staying there, or what?
I am still working for VidCon. Like I have a job at VidCon for another year or less than a year. Yeah.
And then you think after that, you're like, I'm just going to leave it to other people.
What I want to do is continue to help the way that I help now, which is like finding interesting things to talk about in our content. Like that's to me, like that is really valuable work that I enjoy. And so like trying to find the interesting things to discuss at VidCon, finding interesting people who are doing interesting things and championing them internally is something that I like doing. What I will probably step away from is crisis management, which is something that I have become exceptionally good at, but not something that I enjoy.
That's just imagining just the internet being angry about a situation. They're like, and this guy, you could be busy with anything else. They're like, his silence is deafening. You're like, I fucking hate that. Not even hating that for you is just like,
no,
it's the same thing of like, I'll be gone. I try to actively stay away from Twitter, and it was like, his silence on this is deafening. And I'm like, I've
seen less of it lately. I think people understand that like humans don't live 100% of their lives in social media. And also that like, it's always bad to respond in the first 6 hours. Like that never goes well. Like James Charles's apology, like the Fine brothers, remember that controversy? Their initial apology? I was like, I called them. I was like, we need to. Sometimes I'm so good at crisis management, I can't stop myself from doing it for other people.
I forget if I've talked about this. They near the end, I'm so glad they didn't, because, you know, especially in that situation, metaphorically speaking, it's very easy to get on the ledge when everyone is going at you and taking joy in it. But yeah, one of their, hopefully, Benny, Rafi, you don't hate me for saying this, one of their last ideas before they finally just decided to do the company equivalent of releasing a notepad statement was that they were going to go live and answer questions as they came in. And I was like, that's literally the worst fucking idea I have ever heard. Please do not do that to yourself. Please do not do that to yourself. Everyone is going to eat your lunch. And so they didn't. But
like, especially right now at this moment when everybody's sort of like taking if anybody remembers this controversy, I'm impressed, because it was the silliest little thing that happened, but it was such a big thing at the moment.
I think it was, I think there was a legal concern that just wasn't thought of. Or like it wasn't done in a predatory manner. But given like their past frustrations with the Ellen show and shit like that, it felt like,
sure, like it made sense to be something to be concerned about. It just wasn't like it just didn't like stick in the popular consciousness, I feel like, as one of the, maybe it did. Like it was a really big deal at the time. It's wild. We've been this has been a fucking roller coaster, Phil.
The whole ride?
It's been fun. It's been fun, but like there's been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of moments of peril.
Oh yeah, no, there have been times where I was like, part of the fun is egging people on, and then there are times where I'm just like, dude, I just want everything to turn off. Like I don't want any more big things to happen. Like I have that concern with my job in the sense of I'm like, it's good for us when stuff happens, but emotionally and personally, I'd rather stuff not happen anymore. But yeah, Hank, we've talked for 2 hours, you crazy bastard. Is there one final note or a piece of advice? We haven't done this with a few guests, but it was something I really enjoyed. Is there a piece of advice, whether it be for anyone kind of just starting out personally, business-wise, anything? What's something that you could throw out to people that maybe don't normally see your face?
Do you mean creators?
Yeah, let's go creators.
No one is doing this in a healthy way. There's a lot of talk about burnout and about how to protect yourself from it. And that is very important. But anytime you're starting a business, I guess this isn't just about creators. Like you do have to put in really long days. And the important thing isn't that you don't put in long days. The important thing is that you have the right fuel to get you through it, and that you cultivate that fuel and you try to cultivate positive fuels. So it's not about revenge, or it's not about like it maybe has been once or twice in my career. But it's not about, the main thing it's about with just validation and attention, but it can also be about craft. It can be about making something that's better than the last thing you made. It's not about making something better than other people, but like challenging yourself to be better than your previous self. And if you can find that fuel, and when there's validation coming in, like you can use those fuels as well, but just recognize when they're bad fuels and when they're not going to last forever. I think that do not expect to get to start any kind of business without having it take up a large piece of your brain real estate. And then the other thing that I will say that this is vital is when you say like I want to be a YouTuber or I want to be an entrepreneur, that like you understand what you actually mean when you say that. Like what do you actually want? Do you want to be a YouTuber? Do you want to be a TikToker? Do you want to be a business owner? Or do you want stability in your life? Do you want an audience? Do you want to make a difference in people's lives? Like, what is your root goal underneath that goal? Go to that first. And because if you just want to be a YouTuber, then like you will have no focus, and you also like everyone will know that you're not doing an interesting thing. You're just doing a thing because you're like trying to get people to pay attention to you. Mm-hmm. And so like find your route and make sure that you feel good about that route. And if it's not something that you really do feel good about, then like maybe you don't want to be a YouTuber, or maybe find a different one.
Absolutely love that, Hank Green. Thank you for hopping on, having a conversation with me. To everyone listening to the end of the podcast, what a champion! Remember, you can pre-order Hank Green's book. It comes out July 7th, right?
July 7th. But you can pre-order now. Foolish endeavor.
Boom.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's as good, Hank. Hopefully it's
all right. I'm sending it to you right now.
Just gonna add that pressure. No, but I will say I genuinely love the first one. I was like, I hope this isn't something that's gonna take him like 7 years, which is a very selfish thing to say when you're not the creator or something. But I'm glad.
That was my main goal, was to get it to come out. I feel very bad for everybody who's waiting, but it's happening. I've got my countdown clock here.
Oh, right there. Is that what that is?
Yeah,
I love it.
This is my. It's from the year 2000, so it's a Y2K countdown clock, but you could program it for anything.
I love that. But dude, once again, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Bye, Phil.
Bye.